Is everybody here? Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so I was told by Marina that you probably know already something about my work, right? Did you visit the exhibit? No, not yet. Okay. Do you have questions, or I don't know, shall I say something? Or I would actually prefer to start from questions if you have any question.
I'll start. Obviously there's lots of layers to your work, and I was wondering how intuitive or spontaneous your mark making is. How much of it is planned and how much of it develops organically?
So yeah, it's a good question. I actually usually plan very little. In this case though, because this is part of a larger project, so we are talking about 3 paintings this size, so it's a trilogy, and the title of the whole project is Love, Birth and Death. So in this case I work with sketches, and I decided in advance, sketches this size more or less, what I would have then realized on a larger scale. Said that, I mean, I knew more or less what I wanted in terms of colors and shape, but everything else is improvised. So I'm actually very instinctive when I work. And even though it might look very gestural, it might look very meticulous, it's actually very gestural. In fact, you know that these are, it's a painting, but it's realized with colored pencils on acrylic on canvas. So, in a way, it is a drawing, but I would prefer to define it a painting because it does look like a painting, and it dialogues also with the history of painting.
How do you achieve some of the marks, like with the fingerprints that are sort of embedded into this visual field with the colored pencil? Is that working with a pencil and then also with your fingers?
No.
It's okay.
Yeah, no, I usually prepare the whole surface. So I tell you since the beginning, what I do is to prime the canvas, and I usually get rid of the texture of the canvas, so there is a lot of sanding before finally I work with the acrylic, and I cover the whole surface with fingerprints and acrylic, and that's how in fact I created this texture. In this case though, I use the
that's almost the priming.
Definitely, it's over the priming. Yes, it's a second coating. And so basically when I start drawing, the whole surface is blue, dark blue. And this goes for all the works in the exhibit, besides obviously the ones on paper in which you use the paper.
When you paint, since you have the first surface that is completely blue, do you just sort of completely put color on the and you don't care at all how it looks like because you just want to have a painting, or do you still sort of, you know what I mean?
I do care. Yes. I do care. In terms of how it looks like, because not particularly on this painting, but it's more visible on the others, you see that sometimes the color is thinner and there is more light coming through. So I'm aware of those spots, and I decide whether to keep them or get rid of them. So, but I'm looking already for a kind of harmony or disharmony on the surface that then will
since it's
be
such
covered.
a large scale, do you paint it with a big brush, or what's the...
Oh no, as I said, actually, I paint with the fingerprints. I don't paint with brushes.
Okay, so the whole surface...
The whole surface is covered with fingerprints, yes. Well, actually, no, in that part, so in this work, the fingerprints are used on the surface of the bodies only. Here, yes, I painted with a brush.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
No, I was really wondering, to be honest, that it was painted all with the fingers because it looked so smooth.
Well, in this case, I look for texture only on the body's shape and very little here, you see, because I wanted this have this sense of dissolving, you know. So the bodies are opening up basically on the blue around.
And how do you find working on such a large scale? Do you prefer
I love it. I love it. This is the first time I work in such a large scale, and I love it also because it brings together everything I've done up to today, it seems to me, because sometimes my work may look more like a journey inside the human body, and sometimes you have a sense of vastity, and you see, you know, geographical areas. So it's almost like a view from above.
Yes.
I think that in the large scale I can combine these two elements. And also there is another thing that I'm very interested conceptually, and is the fact that the image changes from distant or from close, and I think that the experience is obviously stronger when the image is larger, because you really see this shift.
Are the two
in
other
perception.
works in the trilogy going to be the same size as
They
this?
are, the three
Okay.
paintings are the same size. The other two are in fact already just finished.
Oh,
Finished
wow.
before I came
So
over.
you created these sculptures of works of art, so 10 works of art from 2009 to 2017, so 8 years to create it. For example, for this work of art, how long did it take you?
Oh, this one, it took the whole trilogy took 1 year, let's say.
Okay.
And this work of art?
I don't remember.
Well, I can be more specific, but I don't like it in a way. I still have to figure out exactly why I don't like to answer in terms of time, and I think that the time in a way, I mean, time is interesting for me because I like the fact that there is always a certain amount of time involved in the creation of the work, and I like that because it records also the whole process, obviously, you know. So it's not only about one day, one idea, but it's about an execution that changes and evolves over a certain amount of time, and that's interesting for me. But to say exactly if it takes 5 days versus 3 months, I don't know. I don't. I think that is misleading in a way in the reading of the
But
work.
did you work on the parallel with the 3 work of art, so did you do one and then the other one?
No, I did one at the time. One at the time, yes.
But you
when
were
I was
from
working
the
on,
beginning, or you thought that it would be a trilogy? It's not.
no,
that you did
when
one
I
and then
when
you
I
thought-
when I started working on Love, I thought that it was probably
one
just
work.
one work of this size, and honestly, I didn't even know if that would have been successful. It is different from the other works that I did before this one. So at some point I even thought, maybe I will never show it to anyone, and then ended up here.
So did you know the collection Maramotti before?
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah.
The works in this exhibition have been collected over 6 years. So even though the first drawing you see in the exhibition, the oldest drawing you see in the exhibition is from 2009, was actually purchased by the Collezione Maramotti in 2011, and since then they kept collecting. So we did build a good relationship. Yeah.
And are the other 2 works in the trilogy as kind of figurative as these, in the sense that compared to the other works that I saw and have looked up, this has a more kind of clear figure in it? Are the other 2 works in the trilogy similar to that, in that they have a more clear figurative aspect, or are they closer to the kind of, as you said, like the more vast canvases?
Birth is a journey inside the human body,
Okay.
and the womb. So it has some definitely cosmic reference. It feels like a sky, a universe. But then you do see that it's a body.
Yeah.
And the other one, yes, there is again physical a body reference, very strong. Yeah.
I also realised, looking at some of your previous works, how you have quite a like restricted color palette, it seems, or you like to use use blue, for example. Do certain colors have particular symbolic meaning to you, or why do you choose to work with those colors specifically?
Oh gosh, this is a long answer. Let me try to make it shorter. So, blue came into my work in 2000 when I moved to New York, and at the beginning it was the blue of the blue ballpoint pen. So I was making large drawings just with the pen, regular ink, and I like the fact that even though I was representing images, figurative images, the blue was bringing the work, was adding another layer to the work, which was more abstract in a way, and mental also. And I found it very interesting. So I kept working with blue for a long time, also because the blue was very sensitive to the pressure of my hand, and so I decided to investigate also that element, and then the blue became actually the blue of the blue pencils, and then extended into blue ink, and so formally the work was changing, but conceptually was changing as well, and I became more and more interested on reflecting also on race and gender, and possibly most of my works are genderless, and this one I think is a good example for that. This is the encounter of two bodies, but we don't know exactly, where they come from at the end. And in blue became therefore at some point also the color of a universal skin, even though I know that it doesn't exist a universal skin. Each skin has a different history and problems and to resolve today. But I also think that there are, major experiences in life that we all share, and I think that there is ground for empathy. And I thought that blue could create this unifying background for that.
Yeah, I love the sort of the way that you use blue in this painting in particular, and as you were saying, the sort of ambiguity between, or the analogy between kind of like veins in the body, but also this sort of like wider landscape as if we're looking at like a river, sort of seen from above. And how it then bleeds into this, like, as you said, like quite cosmic background. And the color stays the same, but it can be interpreted differently, like in different parts of the canvas. It's really cool.
Thanks. Thank you.
But speaking about the river, because Molly, before we came here, was saying that it reminded her of a photo of Yann Arthus Bertrand. Yann Arthus Bertrand, the photographer that would take pictures from above. So I was wondering if you, because to me it was actually really, it made really sense looking at your pictures. So I was wondering if you had any inspiration from nature photography from above, or if you maybe yourself,
sure.
like maybe you went on a plane or something and.
Well, yeah, sure.
I think really
I'm not sure if I was aware of the inspiration when that happened. But yes, after, very often it's the work that speaks to me before that I even talk to the work, meaning that I may discover something in the work that I find interesting, and then I look into the subject rather than look into the subject and try to put into the work. It goes the other way around. So I think that I discovered this association with the landscape at some point in my work, and then I definitely look over maps into maps of the world seen from above. What is relevant for me is also the connection between certain images inside of the human body and geographical landscapes, because this again brings me back to the reflection on empathy, and I think that probably the understanding of the world outside comes from inside, from our personal experience. So I like to to draw connections between personal and collective, and therefore from internal landscapes and geographical ones outside. Yeah.
I've noticed that the works on display are not framed.
Mm-hmm.
Was that
the
something?
canvas, you mean?
Paintings, The paintings, is that something that you, and even actually there's one that's painted directly onto the wall in the gallery, or drawn onto the wall?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, yeah, good question. Exactly.
Is that something is that how you usually choose to show your work? And if so, is there kind of a thought process behind it?
Even the shift from drawing to painting was in a way dictated by the fact that I wanted to get rid of frames, because the glass especially was creating kind of a barrier between the work and the viewer. So now, I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't have any problem on framing small drawings. I enjoy paper, but I really also like the exposure of the surface without filters, nothing in between.
I have a more technical question. Since blue is such an important color and theme as well in your painting, how do you create your blue? I mean, blue. And there is a art historical history of the blue, like
very true. Yes. So
I'm wondering if because to be honest, the blue in the middle, for example, exactly this touch really reminded me of the blue from Ifra, and I was wondering if how do you create it? Do you sort of just buy blue and then
I just buy blue? Yes, I usually buy. At this point, there are 3 different blues that I'm using. And I choose the one that I think is more appropriate. Okay. One is more purple, the other one is more matte and greenish, like it's a Prussian blue, but it has a tendency towards green. And then the third is the one that I use for the mural, and is almost not a color, I think, because it's so dark and deep that it's close to black. Kind of, even though then you see the transparency in certain spots, and then you see it's blue. Yes.
And I also have a question, how do you, it's also a more technical question, how do you process when you work? Because for example, there's an obvious diagonal going from here to here, so it goes like upwards, and I'm wondering when you work, do you start, let's say, from the left and would go, because I mean it does have something of cinematic. It reminds, the format is really like a cinema, and there is sort of a history. So do you start like this, or do you just draw and then you would go back to patches?
It depends on the subject of the work, I think. In this case, well, what I can definitely tell you is that I try to draw everywhere lightly, so in order to create a composition that is working for me. And then I'm just so instinctive. I struggle to answer these questions because I don't really remember exactly what I do, but I think I probably started working more in the figures and then expanded, I think. In this case, though, but I'm left, so sometimes I usually have the tendency to work too much on the left side, and then I struggle on the right.
So this is one piece of canvas, yes? So, for example, when you are starting doing something, for example, you're stepping on your canvas, are you laying on it? Because it's so huge format.
No, I work with it on the wall. It's
on the wall,
on the
okay.
wall directly,
Okay.
yes.
So I was thinking
and then this painting has been stretched later.
Okay, because I was thinking that maybe you are doing on the floor. And
No, don't forget also these are pencils, so it's not that they smudge, but you want to be careful because it's a delicate mark.
It's so hard to read.
Yeah.
Do you have like a ladder in your studio?
I work for a long time. Up to this work, I use only a ladder, and it took me forever to realize why I had so much back pain. Yes, I would work intensely for 1 week, and then eventually I had to stop for 2-3 days because I couldn't move anymore. But now I bought a scaffolding, and it's much better.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Get an acupuncturist.
But I tried that when I was dealing with the leather, but it's not an issue anymore, fortunately. It really made a difference. And I was also filmed by this guy when I was drawing on the mural.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. And in fact, in that documentation, we can see that for the mural, I was also sitting on an inflatable ball. And when I work at this height, it's very, very useful because your body keeps trying to find the right balance and puts less stress on your spine. So sometimes I also bring the ball on the scaffolding.
Wow.
Well, because otherwise you find yourself
So
always in the most uncomfortable positions for
A long time.
Okay? Maybe we can move to the other. Well, I suggest, though, after this general reading, maybe I don't think if it's possible really to get so specific about each single piece. No, but in my work, I'm interested on reflecting about relationships between humans and then between humans and the surroundings. So, in order to do that, I created these images that look like landscapes in a way, but also like close-ups of the human skins. So I use the human body as a territory, as a matter of fact. So it's a territory that we approach when we go close to someone else, and potentially we can build a relationship, or is the territory extends and becomes a land that walkable also by other people, and so let me try to be more specific in a way. So here, for example, this work is titled "I Wanted to Be There Too," and it was inspired by all this great number of people that currently are moving from one country to the other one. We see it happen a lot in the world. But it's also something that belongs to the human history. So I always try to find the subjects subjects that are more open than just to the current situation. No, so something that really belongs to our history. And this work also represents people on the top that are going possibly from one location to the other one. The title of the work is Another Country, and is inspired by a book of James Baldwin, which I read recently. Not one of my preferred of his books, honestly, but I found interesting the title because I think that he used the title in order to refer to a utopic country. You are aware of that? So utopic country where maybe we can reconsider the idea of gender and sexual relationships, and maybe also of race, or even better, rather than to reconsider that, maybe we cannot, a place where those issues don't even exist. So I thought that that was interesting as a title, also because another country is also how our geographic interior map changes when we go, as a matter of fact, somewhere else and we experience something new, or another country is the other, you know. So starting from the title, that I thought it was rich enough of meanings, I drew this long mural that connects not only one room with the other one in the exhibition and creates a bridge also between what's happening in this room and the other one, because in the other room there are the works from 2009. Where I was working especially with blue and white, and we see already elements, we'll get there, that we find in this room as well.
Yeah, when I saw this, I can't recall the artist's name, but there's an Indigenous artist in Australia that has a similar style to this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just, the way that he represents the, I suppose, landscape of far North Australia has a similar feeling to it. So yeah.
Nice.
Is there a specific inspirational moment back when you first started getting interested in this kind of practice with the connection with people and nature? Was there a moment or a kind of turning point which kind of drove you to be making this as your practice? Or was this a general interest you've always had and wanted to express this?
I think it's an interest that I always had. So my experience of creativity is that I on my 20s I started making things. And through the making and through the work, I understood myself and my interest. So I will say that is a consistent dialogue between what the work was telling me and what, of course, I was experiencing and living and I was putting into the work. So. It's not, I cannot really answer with anything fully rational to your question because it came organically. And now it's easier for me to talk about the world because I also see that reflects my vision of the world and my personality. But I try always to talk about issues that embrace humanity rather than about the personal. No?
Okay, Luisa, I know you will not like my question, but I still want to
yes,
question.
No.
How long did you take to make the wall? You have one joker, so you can.
Well, of course it didn't take that long. Otherwise, I would have lived here, no? But I changed media also. It's not made with colored pencils, white pencil in this case. It's made with pastel, so it was faster. It took around 10 days.
And at the top, it's your fingerprint again? Yeah.
Tops are my fingerprints, exactly.
And
wait, how many days?
10.
About 10. Roughly.
And they are always your fingerprints?
Yeah.
Your own, not your...
Yes, but the fingerprint is very rarely visible because when you dip your finger in
Except on this one.
Painting, no, in that one either. No. Because when you dip your finger in painting, the painting is thick. So basically what you get is just a mark.
Yeah.
And in fact, honestly, at the beginning I was really using the naked hands, and now I'm using gloves. So what's interesting for me is the mark, you know, is the layer. So it's not about my layers on the world, I mean, as well, as much as yours, but the fact that humanity leaves marks, no, over time. Yeah.
But I also...
Just quickly though, in the other, I can't remember who asked about if your other works are as figurative or have the human body in them. And I think that actually looking at these works, which look to be more influenced by geographical landscapes, they still have that very figurative quality because of the mode that you've used to make them. Like in including the fingerprint, you've sort of included the human presence like in the work on like a visual level.
But they include the human presence also in that one.
Yes, but in the first painting that we looked at, that was explicitly the subject was two human figures, and in these works, which I think like look more like landscape or a little bit more abstract, there still is very much this like sense of connection and the human presence.
Gotcha.
But just through the way that the fingerprint is present.
Yeah, it's interesting because actually I didn't have this sense as much in the first room until you started talking about the influence of James Baldwin, for example. But it feels like you're sort of exploring this sort of universal harmony between man and nature, between race and gender. Do you feel like you have a quite like utopian worldview?
Probably.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I really got that sense when you're talking about it.
Yeah, probably I do. Yeah. But this reminds me of something that the guy that was interviewing me before you sent, and he pointed out the divisions, and in the work, as much as I'm seeking maybe for unity, but there are anyway division. One at the end, how can you represent unity if you don't represent division as well? So you bring the concept within the picture, So yes, I probably wish for a utopic world, but I'm also aware and representing cracks and borders and paths that we need to cross, and are not necessarily easy to cross in order to get there. Like that one, for example, that painting has these, actually, now that I'm thinking, maybe it was a good idea to have these two works next to each other, because this one represents something under the surface of earth, if that is earth, or under the skin, who knows, a place where all those lines intertwines, and so things are completely connected, even though outside we see shapes that look like independent and freestanding, disconnected from one the other, but their roots are just one at the end. And this one on the other side is really representing a crack between one surface on the left and the other one on the right that could potentially be united. And here I think that in this work the fingerprints don't really look like fingerprints anymore, but rather maybe like cells, right?
Yeah.
And I'm interested in that too. So to shift from by the way, the fingerprint, that again, it doesn't tell you the gender or the race of the person, right? But you still see that there is an identity, And on the other hand, it becomes a cell within the human body. So the body becomes so large that is a word on its own, Thinking.
I have a larger question, so you can also answer more quickly, since you've been talking about Baldwin. And I think there's also an obvious inspiration from, for me it's very Japanese, the style also, that it's very minutious, very detailed.
In this
the
one?
Colors, yes, in this one. In this one especially. Exactly. But in fact, in this one a bit also, but I think mostly in this one, also from the palette. I would just like to ask, what kind of inspiration do you have, artists or other people such as Baldwin?
Well, that's a difficult question for me.
I know it's a big question because we all have a lot of inspiration.
Yeah,
so.
exactly.
But I still think it's really
and I go very much through phases. So there is a moment in which I am totally taken by the work of an artist, and I look at it as much as I can and read of it and so on. And then, you know, I let it go, and then something else comes in. So I feel very much like a container in which all the informations melt at some point and well, maybe generate something else. So I don't know exactly how to answer.
No, just if you have also a few names, I always think that it's really nice to know the people that you admire.
Consistent long-term lovers
exactly.
are Louise Bourgeois and Anne Smarter.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's perfect answer.
Should we go in the other room, or you have other questions about this work?
It's interesting what you say about this one, because I think you can see the kind of representation of the sublime, like in your work, that she's kind of trying.
And also, the universal, like infinite.
I also greatly admire her for what she says.
Of course, her like philosophy. It's really incredible.
Yeah, incredible, and an inspiration.
Of course,
Yeah, and I also, you know, often she speaks about voices, you know, and well, maybe there is a reading of the voices connected with schizophrenia.
Of course,
now we know that she was affected by that. But I often refer to voices in terms of inspiration. You know, the fact that the work seems to have its own life, and you have an idea, and then you work, and that voice comes through. And there are also moments in which, in fact, you don't hear voices and you don't know where to go. And then, if you're happy with what you have done, I personally, if I'm happy with what I've done, I hope that those voices will keep talking to me also the next time, and you never know. So
No, you can understand. I can understand the inspiration there looking at your work.
As for the works in this room, were these done at a later period or like a different
later,
series?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yes, this one is
because
from
they
2000.
have a very different feel from the other
exactly.
ones.
So this is what I was saying before when we were on the other room, that this mural connects, you know, the works on that room. We're basically kind of walking backward, and then we have another more recent work on the other room, but now we're walking backward. So we went from the work from 2016 in the first room to the works in the second room, 2015, 2014. And 13, I think. This one is 2013, and this one 2009.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and here I was working on paper, but despite the fact that it's paper, the feeling is really of a drawing more than a painting, I would say.
What time was that?
It's 2009.
Yeah. I think it's really nice because, to be honest, it could be really from now. I think it has a lot of resonance in terms of the whole refugee crisis, to be honest. It really does appeal to it. So I think it's interesting to see that it was 2009. I mean, not that refugees didn't exist in 2009.
No, of course. But it seems to be an actual
theme
limited to this time.
Are you still working on paper very often, or mostly
I do
with the
work
canvas?
on paper, yes. Yeah, small size usually though.
Okay.
For me it was interesting when we look at the works that they acquire and we imagine the show and figured what to keep in the show, what not to have in the show. And I saw this piece, and then I look at the others in which I use the fingerprints, and that one I wanted to be there too, with the red sky, you know, with this mass of people. And then I look at these faces, and I thought, oh, you know, they do have the same size of the fingerprints, but they still have all the figurative elements, you know? And I was very happy to include it in the show.
At the beginning you were saying most of the time it's very gestural and you don't plan as much. With something like this that does have that slightly more, I suppose, like figurative detail? Are you planning it out, or are you drawing as you go? Still?
Even it's crazy, but it took me longer to make this work.
Yeah.
This series of works,
Yeah.
anyway, than work as I'm working today, because I was really waiting for the voices to talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I remember that obviously I must have an idea of what I wanted to do, also because I had to paint the outline.
Yeah.
But I never really knew exactly what would have happened inside.
Sure, inside of
Yeah.
it. Okay. Yeah, it looks so. I just asked because it looks very balanced, and in my understanding of, I would imagine that in order to create that kind of balance, it requires this kind of like planning process. But so it's incredible that you're producing that with a more kind of gestural idea. Yeah.
Not really. I don't think that the word gesture
Yeah,
would
of
be
course.
right.
Yeah,
More
yeah.
instinctive, probably.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, yeah.
And the faces now in this, since it was an older work, is this almost like a development into your fingerprints, like kind of? Cool.
When did you start working with the fingerprints?
2012.
How did you come with the idea? Was it
Well, before of that, I made a large sculpture installation, installation of little sculptures, let's call it this way. So we're talking about 230 small porcelain bowls like this, more or less the shape of eggs, but more irregular, which I drew with faces from all over the world, of people from all over the world. So you really have a great sense of humanity when you look at all these faces. So they were installed on the wall randomly like this, and so from far away, they were painted blue, and the drawing was white. The drawing of the face was white. So from far away, it would look like a crowd of people in a square, and then you will get close and look up, and you will see all these faces looking at you, because the faces were facing down. So the work was also inspired by a beautiful book published by National Geographic titled 6 Billion Odors. And now there is a new edition, 7 billion odors, since we multiply so quickly. And so it was a collection of photographs, this size more or less, and little answers of people about philosophical and simple questions like what is happiness for you, or did you ever suffer discrimination in life, and so on. And I love that. You go through the book and you have a sense of humanity, because person in Japan, or the other one in Bangladesh, the other one in New York, would answer to the same question, but short answers, but very sincere and open. So anyway, a lot of faces that I drew for that, that I took for that work, came in fact from this book, and then I added more. But really, you look up and you see all these people looking at you, and they look incredibly diverse. Next step, how to represent a crowd on paper, on a two-dimensional surface. And since, as I said, I always try to be a bit generic in terms of race and gender, I thought that the fingerprint was exactly what I needed, because it still kept, a sense of identity, but it was open. In the meantime, probably that's another reason, I was doing the biometrics and become American. So they were taking my fingerprints and so on. So I think that all these elements brought to the choice of using fingerprints.
Can I add some more private questions? Why did you decide to be American, or did you have to? not that I have something against it, but I think it's
because well, I lived there. I live in New York, and I moved there in 2000, and so I had 2 visas, and then the green card, and then it was a question whether to renew the green card again or go for the passport that would have been forever. So I enjoy my life there, and I thought maybe one day we are going to have a crazy president, and you know, I may have issue with me, my being from abroad, and so I thought that would guarantee me a place where to be.
So into the future.
But honestly, there is another answer also. I'm looking for a utopic place, as she said, and even though I know, and we know very well now that utopic place is certainly not the United States in this moment, as they are showing. And I knew also that the United States are large, and there are certainly many places where I wouldn't even consider to live, considering what I believe on and how I dream the world to be. But New York was for me very welcoming in that sense. I really like the diversity of people, the variety of cultures, the free expression of people of whatever they are, really. And I felt happy to embrace that. I felt happy to find a place that was close enough for me to an ideal place, even though, of course, now I've been there 17 years, and I know that, you know, there are major problems, and there is discrimination also where I didn't want to see it, and the discrimination starts on an economical level already. So, you know, schools for certain people and not for others. So, unfortunately, the bubble broke, you know, and I'm more aware of the problems. But I was happy at the time.
You still live in New York now?
Yeah. Yes. Sure. Yeah.
So you still feel that it's the best place for you?
I still haven't found another one. Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Do you like sort of having this homecoming exhibition in a way?
I'm thrilled about that. Yes,
Yeah.
Absolutely. Also because my last exhibition was at the Fondazione Merz in 2009. And so much happened since 2009. So I'm very excited to show my work here again. And then, of course, I couldn't be in a better place. I really enjoy the support of the Collezione Maramotti. They're fantastic. Absolutely. Kind of, this is an utopic place too, by the way. So maybe we look at this drawing that dialogues well with. This is from 2013, and well, they call it an edition, even though each piece is unique. So there are 9 drawings. Each drawing is connected to the one on the left and on the right, and they all together create a circle. Yeah?
So inside now there's the 8 other
No,
no,
it's an edition of 9 folders with 9 drawings inside.
Okay.
Exactly.
So
they
each
purchase
folder
one,
has
exactly.
only
Someone
one.
else purchase another one, but
yes,
if one day they would ever be brought together, exactly, they would create.
And they're all called Everyone?
They're called Everyone, exactly.
Just entering the gallery space, I'm struck by how there's such a huge contrast in the scale of the drawings. Was that a curatorial choice that you had any say in? Did you want to have that comparison?
I wanted especially something that will take people in from the other room, and that was the element, which kind of belongs to the other room still. So it's like a thread, right, that brings us in, and yeah, I actually also like to zoom in and out in terms of scale.
Yes.
So it's like it's the most associate with like a human body aspect, but it also is quite, this is going to sound so simplistic, it's almost like futuristic in the way that you've represented a kind of a lightness. It's like it's glowing, and it's very, I feel like it's so different to a lot of the other things that are in this exhibition, even though obviously stylistically it has a lot of similarities.
But I think it's interesting how for this one, the scale is typically really reminding of the first one, so very really large scale. But whereas in the first one you would take a whole painting, for this one you decided to take 4 canvases and put them together. So it was just a remark. I think it's interesting because
I think there are 2 reasons for that. One is probably also justified by the fact that it was the first time that I approached such a large scale. So
yes, because this was before the.
So instinctively, probably I added pieces together in order to get larger. But there is also another element that I thought it would justify in terms of construction of the work, my choice, and is the fact that this work is titled North, East, South, West. So it really opens already. The title opens in 4 directions. So each one of them is could be independent. It is independent, but then they meet and they create a unity. And I thought that was relevant.
And since you one of your main topic or idea is also the collective, do you maybe work in a collective? Not necessarily that you would say. Like the surrealists, we make a manifesto, but because it's really a question that I'm always asking myself. I feel that in the last years we have lost this connection with the community of artists, of like movements, groups, and coming, for example, now from the Peggy Guggenheim Collection, where it's the 20th century, so it's so strong that you would say, okay, there's the futurists, then there's the cubists, then there's the surrealists, the Dada, and they all, of course, we all know they also had fights internal, but they would still say, okay, we kind of have a shared thing. And I feel that in the last couple of years, it sort of lost its value, or that just artists work a lot by themselves. And since one of your topic is community, how do you relate to this? Do you work also in
studio, I like to work by myself, but I feel part of a great artist community in New York. And we do share studio visits a lot, and go to see exhibitions together. My boyfriend also runs 2 exhibition spaces, Cat House Funeral and Cat House proper in Brooklyn, and this is brings together a lively and growing artistic community. So at the moment it seems to be the ideal situation for me. Because in studio, no, I prefer to work by myself.
This I just understand. It was more of a question to know if you
and also, honestly, many of my works, many of my friends have a very different practice from mine. So, but that is not. That's not a problem. We are definitely able to connect and share.
But you wouldn't say that you collective or
no, we are no. We're just art lovers with different personalities and artists and creative people, different, from each other. I will close it. What do you think?
Thank you.
I have to go through another 5 interviews. I'm feeling a bit tired.
No, that was so interesting. Yeah, thank you so much.
Well, it was lovely. Thank you.